সকলকে স্বাগত একাত্তরে। আজকে গাম্বিয়াতে এই মুহূর্তে আমি কথা বলতে যাচ্ছি গাম্বিয়ার বিচারমন্ত্রী, যিনি সম্প্রতি আলোচিত হয়েছেন নেদারল্যান্ডের হেগে আন্তর্জাতিক আদালতে রোহিঙ্গাদের পক্ষে, মানবতার পক্ষে এবং গণহত্যা, ধর্ষণ, ঘরবাড়ি জ্বালিয়ে দেওয়া সহ লাখ লাখ রোহিঙ্গাকে তাদের নিজ ভূমি থেকে উচ্ছেদ করার জন্য মিয়ানমারের বিরুদ্ধে মামলা প্রসঙ্গে। সেই মামলার বিচার কাজে অং সান সুচি সহ মিয়ানমার প্রতিনিধিত্ব করেছে। সেখানে জোরালো ভাষায় রোহিঙ্গাদের মানবাধিকারের পক্ষে কথা বলেছেন যিনি। একাত্তর এই মুহূর্তে তার সামনে গাম্বিয়ার বিচারমন্ত্রী। Honorable Minister, thank you very much for offering such a wonderful interview, and I'm very privileged to be here and talk to you. First of all, what do you think about the Rohingya people who are now in Bangladesh, thrown out from Myanmar?
Well, it's a very sad situation that people would flee their own homeland because they are being killed and raped. It is really sad for those hundreds of thousands of men, women and children who are being displaced and are being moved in a refugee camp in Bangladesh. I think the world should applaud Bangladesh for accepting the Rohingya in their country and for providing all the assistance it has been giving. I think the world should compliment Bangladesh's effort and make sure that the Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh have a safe and dignified return back to their homeland in Rakhine State.
Everybody asks the question, I'm sure you answered many times, why Gambia? But my curiosity is to know about the person, you. What moved you to argue for the human rights of those stateless people? When we were watching you in the International Court of Justice, we feel that we are talking from the heart. So what made you that?
Well, it's certainly coming from the heart. I went to Bangladesh in May of 2018 for the 45th Council of Foreign Ministers meeting in Dhaka, and the Bangladesh Foreign Ministry organized a trip for us, members of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation delegation, to Cox's Bazar. And so we went to Cox's Bazar and interacted with the refugees, and then they recounted their stories to us, stories of organized and systematic mass killings, of mass sexual violence, of mass rape, of torture, of babies being burnt alive. And it reminded me of my experience as a prosecutor at the Rwanda Tribunal, where I was involved in the prosecution of genocide for a decade and a half, 14 years of my professional career. And the similarities of the stories, the pain, the hurt, the look of fear on the faces of those refugees, and yet the world was doing nothing to stop it. And so that was the motivation for me, and I proposed a resolution on behalf of the Gambia at that meeting to set up an ad hoc ministerial committee, because I recognized that while the OIC was making a lot of diplomatic and political effort, there was no effort on the legal front. And so I thought, well, perhaps it was about time to open the legal front and hold Myanmar to account for the genocide that it is perpetrating against the Rohingya.
Didn't you find any difficulties to convince inside the OIC leaders to bring the case to the international court?
Well, I think the OIC, at the time that I put forward the resolution, also recognized that in addition to its diplomatic, humanitarian and political efforts, it perhaps required a legal effort. And they had the opportunity to have a concrete proposal on the table which they could consider from, I suppose, someone like me with the experience that is required for such a process.
So, if I come to the court proceedings, which the world watched in the mid of December, that Aung San Suu Kyi, the Peace Prize owner of the Nobel Prize, and she has been arguing for the people of her country, saying that it was a result of an armed conflict. So, how do you find that?
I have never in the history of genocide or in my entire professional career seen perpetrators of genocide readily accept that they have committed genocide. There is always a defense. There is always an alternative theory that they want the world to believe. And I think we have seen time and time again, in spite of those alternative theories, in spite of those defenses, international tribunals have concluded that genocide did occur. And so it's the same story here. Myanmar is denying the perpetration of genocide.
I'm not talking about genocide, Mr. Myanmar. I'm talking about Aung San Suu Kyi. The person again matters. As I mentioned, you also matter for the talking for the people. And in against of that, when we see Ms. Suu Kyi, how do you feel when in front of you talking her, what you mentioned as perpetrator? So
it's not about the person of Aung San Suu Kyi. It's about the state of Myanmar and its responsibility under the Genocide Convention. However, I have to add that I am disappointed, of course, to see Aung San Suu Kyi take the position that she took. This is a woman who represented the triumph of justice over injustice, who represented respect for human rights, who inspired millions of people around the world, including myself in the human rights world, who advocated for freedom and justice and respect for the rule of law. And it is unfortunate that she now represents a whole different set of values and basically thrown away everything that she has stood for in her entire career. That is regrettable, that is unfortunate. But I think the focus really should be on Myanmar, and the focus should be on the plight of the Rohingya, what the world should do to stop the commission of genocide against the Rohingya. This case is not about me or Aung San Suu Kyi or the Gambia or Myanmar. This case is really about what the world must do to stop the commission of genocide against the Rohingya and to ensure their safe and dignified return back to their homeland.
when we talk about the Aung San Suu Kyi statement, we heard that she was talking about the Arakan Salvation Army, the ARSA, and their armed terrorism activities. Didn't you find challenging to make the documents against this kind of strong argument? Because she was mentioning particular the date, incidents, place where that occurred, she claimed.
You see, there is always a pretext. There is always a cover story. I believe, credit to Aung San Suu Kyi, she has admitted that there might have been disproportionate use of force. She did say that. Now, what we are saying is that what has happened there is beyond just a disproportionate use of force. What has happened there is a genocide, a deliberate and calculated act intended to destroy the Rohingya as a group. That is what is ongoing in Rakhine State against the Rohingya, and not a disproportionate act. Certainly, a disproportionate act is part of the indications of genocide, but there is clearly an intent to destroy the Rohingya group.
Suu Kyi also mentioned that they are going through a justice procedure through an independent commission, state by state, to find out the responsibility and bring the justice. Don't you trust that, or don't you think that's enough for this kind of genocide or what happened in Myanmar?
Well, whatever actions they are taking in Myanmar against individuals is in spite of the responsibility that Myanmar has as a state. And so this is only in addition to whatever actions they are taking. But having said that, I do not believe, the Gambia does not believe, that Myanmar is capable of undertaking the legal processes that are necessary to ensure accountability for these crimes. We don't want to think, and I think, will not be fooled to think that the Myanmar military will put its own chief of staff, its own second in command in the army, its own generals on trial. We have seen what has happened with the soldiers who were tried and convicted of killing the 10 unarmed civilians. They were sentenced, I believe, to 10 years and then released only 7 months after. Now, no one in this world will take seriously Myanmar's undertaking that they will conduct a free and fair trial, which will not be a sham. I think we have all seen how they have reacted in the face of such a mounting and overwhelming evidence against those soldiers. We do not believe Myanmar has the willingness or the capability to undertake such trials.
Do you trust that for us it's a bit complicated to think that Myanmar will accept the verdict if it goes against of them, because it seems that they don't care anybody, any state, anything in the world?
Well, I will not say that they don't care insofar as this case is concerned. The very fact that they have appeared before the International Court of Justice and the very fact that very senior members of the government appeared, including Aung San Suu Kyi herself, shows that Myanmar has taken this case very, very seriously. It shows a responsible attitude on the part of Myanmar insofar as this case is concerned. And I have no reason to believe that they will shun that responsibility if the court decides one way or the other. I have every reason to believe that they will abide by the court's decision in view of their responsible attitude to this case so far.
So again, the question comes always our mind that where you mentioned that there was diplomatic initiative, there was political goodwill, but all the organization, the big think tanks, UN, OIC, or ASEAN, they did not take initiative. All the big countries, they did not come forward, even the Muslim countries. So Gambia, what is your strength to fight this case?
Well, this is not about economic or military power. This is about justice. It's as simple as that. It is about doing the right thing. It is about standing up for those who can't stand for themselves. It's about using our moral voice in condemnation of oppression wherever it occurs. The Gambia has its own responsibilities under the Genocide Convention. We have our obligations under that convention. International law is not the exclusive preserve of the rich and powerful states. It is in the interest of every state, big or small, to ensure respect for an international rule of law system. And the Gambia has its own obligations. As I said, we do not have to wait for others to assert their rights. We have those rights like all other states, and we are only concerned about our own obligations and responsibilities. And that is why we have stepped up and taken up this challenge, because we believe we do not have to wait for others to do so. We have lived through over 2 decades of dictatorship in this country. We have gone through very difficult times. We have our Truth Commission process is revealing the extent and gravity and nature of the crimes that were committed against the people of this country, of murder, of rape, of other forms of violence against ordinary Gambians. And we believe that if the world had spoken up against what was going on in Gambia, if the world had condemned in very strong and unequivocal terms about what was going on in this country, we perhaps wouldn't have gone through 2 decades of that terrible experience. And that is why we do not want others to feel our fate or our pain. We know how it feels like to be unable to tell your story to the world, to be unable to share your pain so that others can help. And that is why we believe it is our moral obligation and responsibility to speak for the voiceless, particularly in crimes as serious as genocide.
So when you talk about this so particular one by one, it seems that you have proper homework you have done, and you said that you worked in Rwanda for the people and genocide over there. So if the case goes on, so what will be your point to prove that really the genocide happened, really the ethnic cleansing happened? So are you confident enough that you have the proof and documents?
Well, I think I am not alone in my belief that genocide has occurred or is occurring against the Rohingya in Myanmar. I think the United Nations established an independent fact-finding mission which has concluded in its report that there is genocidal intent all over the activities of the Myanmar authorities against the Rohingya. The United Nations Special Rapporteur to Myanmar has also concluded the same. The Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide to the United Nations Secretary General has also made statements indicating that there was a possibility of genocide occurring. Now, having all of those independent entities conclude that there was genocidal intent, and I, having had the opportunity to interact with the refugees at the camp, having listened to their stories, and having prosecuted genocide, like I said, for a decade and a half of my life, I believe that the evidence of genocide is actually very compelling and overwhelming.
How long it will take to get a result from this court?
In terms of the merit of the case, the substantive suit, again, based on precedents, we know that the ICJ cases at the ICJ take a few years, and we don't expect to have a decision on the merits. Probably it will take, we don't expect to have a decision soon. It will take probably a few years, 3 or 4, depending on how fast the court moves.
You mentioned you expect that the return of the Rohingya people on their own land and a dignified life. Do you really optimistic about that?
Oh, absolutely. I have every confidence that if the world continues putting pressure on Myanmar so that the authorities in Myanmar will understand that this is a global community, that the world will not tolerate them treating their own people in this way, and that there is a price to pay if they continue along this path. I think if the world speaks very clearly and loudly, I think Myanmar will listen, and they will allow the Rohingya to return to their homeland in peace and freedom.